entitled, Should I Say Something? Coming Forward About Sexual Misconduct, presented by the Office of Social Equity at Westchester University. I'm your presenter, Alina Torres-Zickler, Assistant Director of Social Equity. To give you an overview of what we'll talk about for this session, we'll first start with what is sexual misconduct. We have a sexual misconduct policy at Westchester University, and not everyone knows what the phrase sexual misconduct covers or talks about. So we'll define all the pieces that fall under that umbrella. Next, we'll look at the national culture of underreporting. That's something that isn't often talked about, and we'll give some highlights on statistics as well as some lived experiences. Next, we'll look at what are the options for reporting at Westchester University. And last, what support is available for employees and students at the university. So what is sexual misconduct? For us, it is an umbrella term that covers these terms underneath, these 6 terms, and I'll go through each definition in just a moment. But to give you a sense, sexual misconduct does its best to cover all the different aspects of misconduct that deals with aspects of a sexual nature. And so to get started, let's look at sexual harassment. So in our sexual misconduct policy, and typically this is a broader definition that's used in a lot of places, sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other harassing conduct of a sexual nature. So such conduct creates an intimidating, hostile, or abusive living, work, or educational environment. So one example would be sexual comments said by someone, and that could be in a residence hall, that could be in a classroom, that could be between student to a faculty member, or between a faculty member and a student, or between 2 faculty or 2 employees. So there can be a combination of experiences when working on a college campus. Now, looking at sexual assault, we define that in our policy as any type of sexual conduct or contact that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient. Now, to drill down a little bit further, non-consensual sexual contact is any intentional sexual touching, however slight, with any object or body part by a person of any gender or sexual orientation that is without consent. Non-consensual sexual penetration is also covered under sexual assault, and that is any sexual penetration, anal, oral, or vaginal, however slight, with any object or body part by a person of any gender or sexual orientation that is without consent. So that is sexual assault and how we look at it under the policy. Now, looking at sexual exploitation, this is a newer definition that really has come about because of the advent of the increase of technology. And so our definition for sexual exploitation is that sexual exploitation occurs when a person takes non-consensual or unjust sexual advantage of another for their own advantage or benefit, or to benefit another person than the one being exploited. So to give an example, this is the use of non-consensual video, photographing, audio taping of sexual activity, distribution of video without consent, or photos or sound recordings. And this is an example of things of where maybe there's been stories in the news of roommates, college roommates, who have videotaped their roommate having sex without consent and sharing that, either webcasting it live or sharing it later. Photos that are taken that might have been consented to be taken, but then were shared without that person's, with one of the parties' consent. So that's sexual exploitation. Stalking is defined as engaging in a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for his or her safety or the safety of others, or for the person to suffer substantial emotional distress. So to give some examples here with stalking, such as unwanted telephone calls, unwanted text, unwanted gifts, pursuing the person, showing up at their class, at their place of work, running into them often, hanging outside of their residence hall, hanging outside of a place where they're hanging out with other friends. So this can take the form of both electronic stalking, again with the advent of technology, so ongoing things on the internet, or in person. Now the last 2 definitions are different but fit together similarly. Domestic violence and dating violence. The difference between the two is really the relationship and length of the relationship for the two. So I'll start with domestic violence. We define it as violence committed by a current or former spouse of the victim, by a person who with whom the victim shares a child in common, by a person who is cohabitating with or has cohabitated with the victim as a spouse or someone similarly situated to a spouse, meaning that could be a same-sex partner. The parties do not have to be married, but domestic violence typically demonstrates that they have a longer standing relationship, or there's a child involved, or they've been living together. The differentiation with dating violence is, in our policy, is defined as violence committed by a person who is or has been in a social relationship of a romantic or intimate nature with the victim. And so that is determined based on the length of the relationship, the type of relationship, frequency of interaction. So there are some pieces, but typically with dating violence, it's someone they've been dating for a little while, but they typically, as differentiated from domestic violence, they do not live with the person, they are not married with them or to them, and they do not have a child in common. But they're dealt with similarly on campus as something that we take seriously, as all of these are under sexual misconduct. So I want to take, now that we have the definitions and we've talked about a little bit of a couple of examples, let's look at, do people talk about sexual assault and sexual violence and overall sexual misconduct? This data is specifically about sexual assault and reporting of rapes. This comes from the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. And I just want to highlight the first piece, which is that their statistics out of every 100 rapes that occur, 40 get reported to police. Now, number one, I want to note that if a student or employee experiences sexual misconduct on campus, they have two options. They do not have to report to police. You can go through our on-campus processes to deal with the sexual misconduct. So while I'm talking about rapes that get reported to police in these statistics, please know that when we get to the support area, that there are multiple options. What this slide is really highlighting is the fact that there's a national culture of underreporting. So we understand that it is very difficult to come forward and talk about not only rape and sexual assault, but anything that falls under the umbrella of sexual misconduct. And the hope is that through this presentation and other conversations with resources on campus, that a student or an employee of Westchester University can find support and hopefully come forward about sexual misconduct. Because as you see, it's a large issue across the nation. Now let's talk about personal stories related to sexual misconduct. While you can't see any of the faces from these slides, the point of seeing these pieces is that, again, it is a national issue. How do we continue to dialogue and support those that have experienced sexual misconduct? Because as you see, these are real people from a campaign related to a young woman who was sexually assaulted and felt that her institution, she was a college student, didn't respond well to her needs and to what happened to her. And that's what we're trying to not have happen at our university. And oftentimes, as someone who has worked on victim hotlines, you can see in the bottom slide, the person heard from a friend that doubted their story. And also you can see both someone who was a teammate of the perpetrator in the top left, didn't believe the woman around her sexual misconduct. And also you can see the story from the assailant in the top right. I know you'll regret stuff in the morning. These are common things that people hear and make it hard to report. But the thing is to reach out and to find support. And that may be just starting off with counseling. It may not be reporting your story, but it's about making sure that you are taken care of, that, or the person that you love is taken care of, that they are able to talk to someone about what happened. And so here's some additional slides. Why don't you take a year off, get a job at Starbucks, and come back after he's graduated? You'll see in the left side here that was said to a student by their dean at their institution. And again, to know that at Westchester University, we are here to support the student. In a moment, we will talk about the supports on campus, but the biggest piece is knowing that you are not alone. Or if you know a friend who is a survivor of sexual misconduct, you are not alone. And there are supports that you can get connected to that are both on and off campus, that are both confidential and private, that can allow you to talk about what has happened and to connect with someone who can help you move forward. And if that's about reporting what happened, that's fantastic. If you're not at that place, that's okay, but we want to make sure that we find you support and get you connected so that you can have a successful educational experience at Westchester, both either as an employee or as a student. So what are my options for reporting? If you have moved to a place that you want to report, there are several ways. One is talking to public safety. You can report there, but you can also state that you do not want to press criminal charges. You can talk to, if you live on campus, you can talk to a resident assistant. They are employees of the university in the role of the resident assistant, and they can put in a report. Here at the Office of Social Equity, you can come talk to the assistant director, myself, or the director if you want to report an instance of sexual misconduct, or if you want to just talk about your resources or find out more about what next steps could be. Next is the Women's Center. They have a variety of student and staff who work in the center who can provide support, who can submit a report, and can walk you through your resources. Any faculty and staff member are people that you can talk to, especially if you have a relationship with a staff member or faculty member. You might be able to walk through and find out more about what you should do. Judicial Affairs is a place you can also report to, and also our Assistant Dean of Students. She's someone who works with both the Health Center as well as with the Women's Center as supervising those areas, and can also provide you connections to reporting. There's also our online website, on Westchester's main site, wcupa.edu/sexual misconduct. And it has tons of resources and information that will help you to report as well. So I'm going to move forward with resources, as I mentioned. Or actually, why should someone report? Let me stay there and then we'll move forward to resources. So first, in many ways, reporting can help start the healing process. It can help you start to figure out where you want to move from here, because a lot of times people who are survivors of sexual misconduct struggle to, if they're a student, to keep attending classes, because they're afraid of seeing the person if that other person who assaulted them is either an employee or a fellow student. And also it's a chance to break the silence. As you saw earlier with the reporting numbers, this is a crime or an act that is often not talked about. And a lot of survivors, when they take part in opportunities to speak out or to break the silence, feel that it is a way to start to heal and to also get their voice to be heard. And looking at to take steps to regain control. A lot of times sexual assault, particularly, and in many ways sexual misconduct, is about a loss of control. If someone is a victim of sexual exploitation, they didn't have control over their image or the video that was shared without their consent. So being able to report takes control and allows that person to find some movement towards closure related to that loss of control. And last is really important, and why we have the regulations we have on campus around Title IX, which is to stop the perpetrator's behavior. I should be clear that if you speak to anyone at the university who is an employee who is not the counseling center, the counseling center is a confidential resource on campus, as are any pastoral groups or offices related to the university. They are confidential on campus resources. Any other resource or faculty or staff member is has to report any instance of sexual misconduct. If you have questions about that, please explore the website at wcupa.edu/sexual misconduct. But that is something to know, that a key part of our work is to stop the perpetrator's behavior. We don't want the person to sexually harass, sexually assault, or stalk another person on campus. So for you, if you're thinking about reporting, or if you have a friend who's thinking about reporting, know that a key piece is helping them heal, getting them support, but also stopping the perpetrator from acting again. So what support is available? As I mentioned earlier, Student Health Center is a place where you can go for some of your medical care. So please think about that. If there's any sexually transmitted diseases that you'd like to get tested for, they're a place that you can talk to about your health, your body, and helping to heal that process. Also, the Counseling Center is a key place to go for counseling. They also have a sexual assault survivors group that you can be a part of that meets. So that's something that you could talk to someone to consult to see if that group is something you're interested in. The Women's Center is also very key, as I mentioned earlier, as support of both students and staff who work there, who can provide support to talk through the issues that you're having, or if you want to connect to resources that are off campus, which I'll mention in a moment. Judicial Affairs can provide support, especially if you're thinking about going through the process of an investigation related to your sexual misconduct experience. Public Safety is available. They also are available for instances where, for example, we had a student who was assaulted in the city of Philadelphia. And so they helped connect that student with what precinct they needed to go to report their sexual misconduct. While we couldn't deal with it specifically as a university, we can provide support to the student to help them move forward with their case. Public Safety can also provide transportation to local hospitals. If a sexual assault has happened, you can go there for an examination as well if you decide not to go to the Student Health Center, and Public Safety will provide transportation if you do not have it. Some off-campus resources to highlight are Crime Victims of Chester County. They have a 24-hour completely confidential hotline that you can call, and so please check out their website and find out that information to call them. Also know that they have advocates that they can provide that you can meet with. They can accompany you to the hospital. They can provide you insight on what to do next. So they're a great resource. Also, Domestic Violence Center of Chester County is also a great resource for those who are survivors of domestic or dating violence. So what can you do? If you know someone who has been sexually assaulted or has experienced any form of sexual misconduct, the first thing to know is listen. If they've started to talk to you or open up, the key piece is they need someone to listen. The next piece is to respond, to have something to say. That can be a very difficult thing, but kind and assuring words are probably the biggest thing that they need to hear. Last important piece is refer. Know your resources, find them out. Know the Westchester website, wcupa.edu/sexual misconduct, or look up the different resources in the Chester County area. But a lot of local on-campus and off-campus resources are on that website. Be a support. Check in with that person, especially if your friend decides to report. Help them, check in with them throughout their process, because once you report, it starts a process that, while we do our best to move it along as fast as possible, it does take a couple of weeks, and so that's something to be a support through that time. Again, be a resource. This person may not know what to do or where to go, and even once they get a process started, whether it's starting to go to counseling or if it's starting to report to a particular office, they will need someone who can be a resource for what to do next. And most importantly, be kind to support. Again, be that listening, caring ear. And also, as you see in this poster here, to do something to step up. A big campaign that will be starting soon is bystander responsibility. And so I like this series with this poster here. There's a bunch of posters related to make your move to end sexual violence, especially a lot of men who are stepping forward to talk about what their role is in stepping in and stopping sexual misconduct, especially sexual assault. And so here you see the young man saying, she was on her own, so I made my move and told the guys hassling her to back off. there are times that we can step in and stop the behavior before it happens. If you see something, say something about it. Help your friend, stop someone. It's amazing what stepping in as a bystander can do to improve our campus community and our campus culture by saying something about what's going on. So whatever questions you may have about sexual misconduct, about reporting, I've said the website a couple of times, but there it is as a key resource for our campus. As I said, it not only has a link and information about reporting and links you to the sexual misconduct report form, which is found online. Like I said, you can report to any of those offices you saw earlier, but you can also report to the website. If the survivor or victim can fill out the report, a concerned third party can fill out the report, so you don't have to be the direct person involved to fill out the report. You also have my direct email if you're interested in talking with me. Oftentimes there are concerns about consent and what consent means, and I know we didn't get into that in today's presentation, but if you're interested in or have questions related to consent, feel free to let me know by shooting me an email or setting up a meeting. And again, or also checking out any of those offices that are helpful and available on campus. So again, thank you for taking part in this presentation from the Office of Social Equity at Westchester University. I hope you found some important information, were able to get some insight into sexual misconduct. And if there's anything that comes up, again, feel free to reach out. Again, the most important thing with sexual misconduct is getting care and support for the victim or survivor. And if you move to a place of reporting, it's important. Know that it makes a difference, and it makes a difference for our campus and oftentimes can make a difference for the survivor. Thank you.